And we're live. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Buck the Quo's Instagram Live. Ask Me Anything. I'm Noah, and I am filling in for Chris today. So, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with Buck the Quo, Buck the Quo is a campaign to give Idaho's teens a voice and platform to feel confident in their futures. So, we're here for you guys. If you're not sure about something, no problem. Just ask questions, and we'll see how we can help you guys out. So, we're going to get Andrea here in a second. So on that note, we're giving these Instagram lives to give you guys an opportunity to ask direct questions to various individuals from various backgrounds. Hey, Andrea.
Hello.
Hey, I'm just giving a quick background on what Buck the Quo is, and we'll introduce you and then just get you ready to get the ball rolling.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, these Instagram lives are just an opportunity to ask people like Andrea any questions so you guys get a better understanding of what you guys want to do with your futures. And if there's anything that you guys are unsure about, maybe just want to know a little bit more about, you have a professional right in front of you to ask those questions. And to help sweeten the deal, we're going to give out some swag today too for some of you guys who participate. We got some pretty cool notebooks. Ooh. Got some hats. And the piece de resistance. We got a 25 fluid ounce or 740 milliliter hydro flask. So make sure you guys ask questions, you guys participate. I see you guys all waving. What's up to all you guys? Waving back to all you real quick, all you cool cats and kittens. So yeah, today's very special guest is Andrea Hovey, and just a quick overview, and I'll let you go into this and just talk about yourself as well. Former Navy service member, currently you do quality and environmental compliance programs for ESI Construction Company, also involved on the nonprofit side of that. And on your free time, I know you like to be outdoors, ride your bike. I think I've seen you riding your bike around Boise a couple of times.
Yep.
You go on the hikes, which is awesome. What better place to be than in Idaho, right?
Absolutely.
And fun fact, and I'll let you talk about this too if you want, is that you've been to every continent in the world.
Yep. Yes, I have. I've
That
been
is so
very
cool.
fortunate to get to do that.
All right, Andrea, I'm gonna hand it over to you. Why don't you, if you can, just give a quick background about who you are and what you do, and then I'll be monitoring the questions that come in, and I'll ask away.
Yep. So, like Noe said, my name's Andrea Hovey. I actually grew up on the East Coast. I went to high school in Miami, Florida, and when I was in high school, both my parents had been enlisted in the Navy, and I had a couple of older brothers who were interested in, or who actually had done ROTC. So I got interested in going military track as well. So I went to college at the Naval Academy. I studied engineering. When I got out of the Navy after 5 years of being on ships, I decided that I wanted to do something technical and something that didn't require me to be at a desk all the time. So I got interested in construction management, and I worked for a company that did HVAC and plumbing for a few years in the Seattle area after the Navy. And then I moved here to Boise a few years ago and got connected to ESI construction. So that's kind of my professional background. And like you said, I really enjoy traveling. I've gotten to take some trips on my bicycle in a number of places. So I've spent time in South America on a bike. I've been to Europe on a bike. And then I enjoy backpacking, camping. I've climbed a couple of mountains, and Idaho is pretty much paradise for someone who likes to do a lot of those things in their free time, as most of you who are from Idaho would know already.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, and I'm sure we're going to get some questions that we'll delve into just the outdoors you've seen a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious, and I'm sure a lot of these folks tuning in are very curious as well. One about the military side, just learning the ins
Mm-hmm.
and outs, going to the Naval Academy, and then also uh, just construction and how one translated into the other. I know you talked about HVAC a little bit, but
Yep.
just the trajectory, because sometimes it doesn't seem like the dots connect right away. So maybe you can talk us through the military side and then the professional side of what you do right now.
Yeah, so from the military side, the way that I joined the military, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do that. So I knew for me, 100% college was in my path, and I wanted to go to college. So I was looking for scholarship dollars. I come from a big family. I have 5 siblings. We knew that my parents weren't going to be able to pay for college for all of us. And so I started looking into scholarships. So my brothers did ROTC, and that was how they, that was how they paid for college, or 2 of them did anyway. 3 of them actually did ROTC. And then I looked into the Naval Academy, which also is a 4-year scholarship program where you pay for your college through serving in the military. So most ROTC programs, you owe 4 years of military service. If you do the Naval Academy, it's a minimum of 5 years. But then, a lot of other people, I have a younger brother, for example, who he's incredibly mechanically gifted, but he's never really been an academic kind of guy. So he enlisted in the Navy, which is another option. So you basically choose a trade right out of school, and then through your service, you get dollars toward a GI Bill education that you can use after your military service. So for a lot of people that aren't really sure, maybe college doesn't seem like the immediate thing you feel like you're doing, but you're interested in seeing the world and getting to do a lot of stuff like that. Enlisting in the Navy is great. And then after your time in the military, you have your GI Bill, which you can use for college or trade school, or to send your kids to college. There's a lot of different options there. So they're both great options for somebody who's not sure exactly what they want to do and doesn't want to go into a whole lot of debt to pay for college right out the gate.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then you asked,
really quick,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Nope, you first.
Oh, I was just going to ask. I was just going to ask because you mentioned the trade part, and I think there are a lot of options there with the military. And as far as trades, do you know the enlistment side, if you can choose your trade? Because I think sometimes there is a misconception that you get a trade assigned to you, but how can you choose a trade?
So I will fully admit that I'm not probably as knowledgeable about that side as I am about the coming through college path, but there's a test that everybody takes before you enlist, and it's called the ASVAB, which I honestly can't remember the acronym, but it's an aptitude test. So you take a test, and they, through this test, can help evaluate what you might be good at. And I know in high school I had to take a test similar to that, that was sort of like, hey, you should be a park ranger. That would be the job for you. So it's kind of like that, where they look at all the different jobs that are in the Navy or all the different jobs available in the Army, and they sort of limit it down to say, you're probably going to do better. You're better inclined for these types of roles. And then you do have some option, but everything, when you join, you join to serve your country, and sometimes the job that might be the one that you really want isn't available because we need somebody doing something else at the time. So you don't necessarily have 100% option to pick, but they do try to work with you to get something that fits within your interest level, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and really great way to put it too, in terms of wherever the need's going to be too. That's going to also create an effect. Sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but
you're fine.
Lose that train of thought.
Yep, and I think you'd asked me to explain about the interest, like the trade side of construction, and I didn't really answer that half of your original question. So for the trades, the interesting thing about construction right now is that I forget the percentage, but I think it's something like over 40% of the workforce is over 50 years old right now in the construction industry, particularly in the trade side of things. So for those of us who are working in construction, I mean, my company has people actively working with some of the local community colleges to develop, how do we train people to do framing work? How do we train people to do construction work? How do we get kids to be interested in that? Because the reality is we have a lot of people in our country who are retiring and who will not be part of the workforce, and we're losing a whole lot of talent and knowledge. And so for the person who doesn't want to be at a computer all day long and who likes working with their hands, we're kind of starting to see 5 years from now feeling more and more desperate to get more bodies in the door to do this kind of work. So I think the pay will be going up for some of these jobs, especially when you start looking at the more skilled trade. So electricians take more training and skill, so they tend to get paid better. Plumbers, believe it or not, pipe fitters, even the HVAC, like those trades that require a little bit more training and education, especially for the engineering technical folks. The the pay is going to be getting better, and especially in places where there's union work, the pay can be actually very, very good. So it's an option for somebody who's not set on the college track right away.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit more about ESI and what
Mm-hmm.
your role is there, and
Yeah.
maybe even how the transition was, because you said you came from Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
and you got, I'm assuming you got the job once you moved out here, or
Mm-hmm.
the job was here in Boise or in Idaho. Could you
Yes.
talk about those two things?
Yeah. So let's see. So what does ESI do? ESI is a general contractor. So we build full buildings and we hire all of the other trades. And for the most part, we self-perform, meaning the part of the work that we build ourselves is concrete. And then for almost everything else, we'll hire other contractors to build for us. So we work with local companies that have framers that do siding work and all of those other trades. And we hire them, and then our company manages all of that work to make sure the building turns out how our clients expect. And a big part of ESI's work in the local Treasure Valley area is residential. So we're building a lot of apartment complexes, student housing for college, retirement communities, that kind of work. And then we also are building some of the high-rise and taller buildings in the downtown Boise area. But ESI actually does work all over the country. So we build um, retail. So we build Home Depots, we build Winco grocery stores, we build Albertsons, Fred Meyers, anything you can imagine. Walmart, we've probably built one somewhere in the US. And then we also have a group that works with federal contracts, and we do work actually in several other countries, putting in some military installations. So even with that, we have a lot of different specialties and a lot of different roles. And my role is quality control. So I do a lot of training, and then I spend a lot of time bouncing around to different construction sites to work with our teams and to make sure that we're building things the way that they were designed to be built. And so that's what I do. And that's what we do. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you touched on, I know you love to travel, and we highlighted that a little bit earlier. For those of you guys who are just joining us, Andrea is talking about her time in the Naval Academy, and we touched on how much she loves to travel and her job. I'm curious. Yeah. So actually the question is coming in right now.
Yeah. Do I travel much?
Do you have to travel a lot?
So my particular role does require a fair amount of travel. So I frequently travel to our different construction sites in different parts of the country. I like it because I, again, like to see different areas, and having been in the military, I know people in a lot of different areas. So it's been a lot of fun to get to travel for work, but go see a friend in the evening who happens to live in a different state, and I just happen to be there. So that's been pretty cool. A lot of people who are just starting out in my industry end up getting assigned. So you may start today and go get sent 6 months to go work in another state, or get sent for a few months to go work in different places. And for a lot of people, they like that because they can spend, 6 months to a year in a different city, and then the next project rolls around and they get to go live somewhere else. And it's kind of a fluid lifestyle. It's not for everybody, but some people really enjoy that. And it's kind of a cool way to get to see different parts of the country while still having a job. So it really just depends. And we have other people who work here in our office, and they come to work in the morning and go home every evening, just like most other jobs. So it really does kind of vary depending what role you're in and what you like to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you guys have questions too, anybody watching this, feel free to ask questions. Andrea is a wealth of knowledge, and she'll be happy to answer the questions. I have a bunch of them, so I'm just kind of like, as you're talking, I have more. So, when you apply for this job, I'm imagining you sat down, with HR, and they're telling you about the travel requirements. Did you intentionally seek this out in terms of a job that would allow you this work-life sort of meshing?
I don't know that I was specifically looking for that. And actually, it was something I was a little hesitant about because I didn't really understand what it means. So when you guys apply for jobs, a lot of times it'll say, 20% travel or 40% travel. And that's kind of what a lot of job postings say. But it's really important to have a question or have a conversation with HR, because in my case, it was you might be traveling every week. So the first 6 months I worked at the company, I traveled to Reno almost every single week. So it
Okay.
was Monday, get on an airplane, go down to Reno for 2 or 3 days, walk the job, work on site, fly home, and then finish out the rest of my week on local work. And that was every single week I was on an airplane, which gets pretty tiring. I don't have kids, so it wasn't a huge deal for me to be away from family or anything like that. And I got to pick which days I traveled most of the time, so it wasn't a big deal. But some jobs, when they say 40% travel, they mean Monday through Friday, the first 2 weeks of the month, and then maybe you're home for 2 weeks. So the percentage can mean a lot of different things. So I think it's just a good question to be asking your employer if they say the job entails travel, to really talk about what that actually means for your lifestyle. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that part about travel sparked a lot of questions.
yeah, I
So
know I'm trying to keep up down here. There's a lot.
we had a couple, and we may not get to all of
Yeah.
them, but I think one of them that does come into it is, so is travel paid for with all the amount of travel that you do,
Yeah.
or is it out of pocket?
So I'm going to try and combine that with the has have my projects taken me to other continents. And so to answer that one, when I was in the Navy, I got to travel to other continents, and that was all paid for as part of my job. So yes, on the Navy, but not in my construction work. And then is it paid for? So when I'm traveling, my company reimburses me for my tickets, my hotel, my car, and then my meals. So that's all covered, and that's fairly typical. For the people that we have who are, say, we hire them here in Boise and then they spend 6 to 8 months working, they'll get a stipend. So it'll be on them to go find a place to stay, but they'll get extra money that they can choose how they budget that for themselves. So we call it per diem. So you'll get, say, an extra $100 a week or whatever that amount is for the area based on the income. And then that's meant to pay for your temporary housing or whatever you need for that period of time, knowing that you may have a home base somewhere else.
Okay.
So hopefully that
And
answers that for people.
yeah, yeah. And I'd imagine, just a quick input, having that opportunity with everything covered, at least, the meals, the travel, the lodging,
Yep.
and your love for travel is you get to, when you're
Yeah.
not working, you get to go out and explore, like you said, meet up with old friends and just go out and do things to learn a little bit more.
Yep.
Just about
Exactly.
what's out there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Um,
pretty great.
we had, I think we had somebody join a little bit late. If you can just give a quick quality and environmental compliance programs
Yep.
in a nutshell.
Yep. So for the type of work that we do on the environmental side, the EPA basically says that we can't pollute waterways, and we need to make sure that anything that we're disturbing that we gets put back. So if we remove the grass and the plants and vegetation, we can't just leave a pile of dirt when we're done. So part of my job is making sure that we're being responsible from an environmental standpoint in the places that we're working, and that we're, putting everything back before we call our project done. And then on the quality side, in construction, an engineer and an architect, or multiple engineers and architects, will design a building, and they specify what materials can be used. They specify how everything needs to come together. And my job is making sure that we're actually following those guidelines as we build, because we hire a lot of different people to come out there. They don't always know everything that they should know, or maybe something isn't clear. So part of my job is walking around and making sure that we're building it the right way. So if
That's
that's
awesome.
kind of
So
the short version. Yeah.
yeah, no, no, and great questions, everybody. Wee Haynes and Nora Navarro, great questions. We had Quinstagram
Mm-hmm.
95 ask, what's your dream project to work on?
Ooh. I don't know if I necessarily have a dream project, but I'll share, I think, what the coolest project that I've gotten to do so far. So when I was living in Seattle, I got to be part of the remodel of the Husky football stadium for University of
Cool.
Washington.
Yep.
And I mean, just the amount of prestige of that project and the amount of attention that was on it, and then also the complexity of expanding a stadium. And then underneath the stadium, we built a whole sports medicine complex and really fancy locker rooms and a lot of stuff that you wouldn't really think about if you're just showing up to watch a game. So I think that was probably in a lot of ways my dream project, just because it was probably the biggest one that I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, and
So.
do you get to interact with all the different, so let's say in terms of the health programs or the medical programs that are underneath, do they tell you, hey, these are our needs? And so then you have to like work with them to understand what it is they need.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things about construction is you learn a lot about other jobs because of building the spaces that people need to work. So when I was in Seattle, I got to do a lot of biotech type buildings. So places where they're doing lab research and developing medicines and things like that. So the things that they needed were really specific. And then, obviously very different than what a football stadium is looking for. And healthcare has really specific needs to make sure that you don't have, disease transfer in that space. If somebody's sick, that the air stays in that room and doesn't transfer to other places, and that things can be sterile. So there's a lot of specialty equipment. And even here, building a lot of the residential stuff that we build, what you want to see in a student housing and what we're building for students and the kinds of social spaces we're putting in buildings are very different than a retirement center that we're building that has memory care. So long-term health needs and things like that. So it is very interesting. You learn a lot about the needs of other businesses when you're building the spaces where they work. So it's pretty interesting in that way.
That's awesome. And Blaze W2020. So Blaze, actually, make sure to DM us. You're asking some great questions, and we'll send you some swag. Okay, so make sure you DM us. But Blaze had another question that came in and said, is it an all year round job or is it seasonal? And maybe you can even just talk about how it's looking in Idaho, or even just in terms of, because you do travel a little bit, like how's it looking?
So we all probably have heard with all of the Californians coming to Idaho, we have a lot of people moving here. So we actually see a pretty positive outlook on the residential style community living construction, because we're seeing record numbers of people moving to the area and everybody has to live somewhere. So I think it looks pretty good for that to be an area of the market to get into, at least for the next few years. I also see, Blaze, you asked, is it a year-round or seasonal? Yeah. So it's a year-round job, although some trades, depending, like we're planning work years in advance. So I'm looking at plans for buildings that we won't start building for another year or two. And for the projects that we're building today, most of them are taking a year to 18 months, sometimes 2 years to complete. So we're always looking pretty far out for the next, the next job, and the next job, and the next job. So there's always work in the planning phase, but there are some trades that are easier to build at different times of year. For example, a lot of our concrete work, we can pour concrete year round, but if you have to do a lot of digging, it's pretty hard to do that in the cold when the ground is frozen. So some of those trades tend to have, peaks and valleys of labor. It's easier to do them, but there's always planning happening, during the times where we're not actually building. So we're working year round on something all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And let's see, we got Nora Navarro. Actually, Nora, also DM me. We'll send you something. Great questions. And maybe, Andrea, if you can revisit your college experience. I think Nora chimed in a little late after we had talked about college a little bit. Could you, give a quick overview of that?
Yep. So my path, I went to the Naval Academy, which is a 4-year college. And then for the Naval Academy or ROTC or any of the kind of service academy and military college options, I owed 5 years of active duty military service after the military. So I didn't get into, or during the military, so I didn't join the construction industry until I got out of the military, which was 5 years after college. So, and then as far as deciding to get into construction, it really was, I wanted to do something technical. I didn't want to move away from Seattle, and my job in the Navy was on an aircraft carrier, and I had to study nuclear power for that. And I did not want to do commercial nuclear power. So those are like really the three things. And I was open to any job that was an option. And I went through a recruiter and got introduced to construction, and it ended up being a pretty good fit just because I like working with tradespeople. I think they're hardworking. They think differently. You could walk around town and point at buildings that you've been a part of. And I like that connection to my work. There's not a lot of things that you can do where there's like a tangible product at the end of your workday. So I think construction and the trades are pretty cool in that way.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Could you, I want to make sure we answer everybody's questions that are coming in. I have another question for you. What's the most challenging part about your job? Mm-hmm. And what's the most rewarding part of your job?
I think one of the challenges, this is a tricky one. I think for the role that I'm in, what's very challenging is trying to keep up with everything that we're doing, because there's an expectation when you're in quality control that you're an expert on everything. And one of the really kind of cool things about construction is it's constantly changing. There's always new technology. Every project that we're touching is a little bit different. So for me is staying current and staying on top of everything that we have that's moving super fast all the time. I would say that's pretty challenging for me to just stay on it and to be relevant in what I'm doing. And then what was the second half of your question? I'm sorry.
The most rewarding part.
The most rewarding is I really enjoy sharing my knowledge, and I really enjoy helping other people be successful. And I feel like in this current role, a lot of what I'm doing is, identifying something that's been done wrong, but then also getting to help solve the problem. And so I can come to the team with like, yep, we made a mistake here, but here's a couple ways we can fix it. And I can help work through that. And then hopefully they walk away having more knowledge so that they're not going to make the same mistake the next time. So for me, that's really rewarding when I come back and work with the same contractor a year later. And they're like, hey, I remember you taught me this last time. And now look, we do it better. And I've had that experience a few times here that has just been really cool. That really just makes my day when that happens, where someone's like, oh, I remember what you taught me, and we're doing it better now.
So you're not just building buildings, you're building relationships.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, people build buildings. Buildings don't build themselves, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make a quick plug, real quick. Everybody who's watching this, Andrea's an amazing guest. If you have any questions that are related to anything that she's covered, or maybe you didn't get to ask your question, if you haven't heard about it, there's a number you can text. It's number 208-208. That's the area code in Idaho. And text BTQ to that number. You can ask that question. You can ask that question or any other question about high school, your future, anything that Andrea's talked about. And if anything, I can reach out to her and we can get that question resolved, or we'll make sure that it gets figured out somehow. So whether you have questions about the SAT, FAFSA, anything about trades, anything about the Naval Academy, ask those questions at that number if something comes up later as you're playing Minecraft or hanging out with your dog in the backyard. Andrea, this has been great. Do you want to leave us with any words of wisdom or anything that you'd like to say to teens around Idaho that are listening? Right now you have their attention, and they're going to be watching this after this live stream as well. It's going to be on our stories, and we're going to post it on our YouTube channel and our website. So if there's anything that you'd like to impart on teens around Idaho.
Oh man, it's a lot of pressure. I would say one, there's a lot of different things you can do with your life. And I feel like when I was graduating from high school, I felt like I had to have it all figured out. And, it had to be a 4-year college. It had to be, whatever my friends were doing, or, I had to be at this level that was expected. And what I learned is there's absolutely nothing wrong with making choices like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to community college for a year or two and figure out what's interesting to me because I don't want to go into crazy debt to go
Yeah.
to a 4-year college right away. Or I think I want to go work construction for a bit and see what I like and make choices later. You do not have to have it figured out the day you
Mm.
graduate from high school. What we didn't really talk about is I've changed my career. Even though I've been in construction, I have done some other things in between Idaho and Seattle I didn't get into and experimented a little bit. And it's totally okay to look at alternative paths. And I would encourage you guys to do that because there's a lot of different jobs out there and you can try a lot of things out and hopefully you'll find a path that's exciting to you because you're going to spend a lot of your time working and it's not really fun to do work you don't love. So find something you love and be good at it.
That's awesome. No, that's such a, I wish this was, because we could talk for a
I
long,
know.
but yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. And thanks everybody who viewed Quinstagram. I see you. Great questions, great participation. Last question. What's going to be the next national park you visit?
Ooh, I haven't been down to anything in Utah. So I've been thinking about going down to Arches or something down that way because it's so close to us and it's just not an area that I have explored yet. So that's probably going to be my next one.
Yeah. And if anybody's got any suggestions or tips for
Yes,
Andrea, if she
please.
goes out to Utah, hit her up. All
Yeah,
right,
I'd love that.
everybody, thank you so much for joining. And Andrea, again, you've been a great guest, and we were very happy and honored to have you on. So thanks for all your information and knowledge and wisdom. And yeah, hope you have a great Monday and rest of the week. And bye, guys.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.